A prayer answered. The old wooden pews of St. Mary's Church creaked softly as the evening service drew to a close. Golden light filtered through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the worn carpet. The familiar scent of candle wax and old hymn books filled the air, creating that peaceful atmosphere that had comforted generations of worshippers. In the third row from the back, a small figure knelt quietly. 7-year-old Emma Chen pressed her tiny hands together, her dark eyes squeezed shut in concentration. Her mother, Sarah, sat beside her, unaware of the silent prayer taking place. Sarah worked 2 jobs to keep their small apartment and put food on the table. During the day, she cleaned offices downtown, and in the evenings, she waited tables at Murphy's Diner. The long hours had carved gentle lines around her eyes, but her smile remained warm and genuine. She brought Emma to church every Sunday evening because it was their one quiet moment together in an otherwise hectic week. Emma's prayer was simple but heartfelt. "Dear God," she whispered so quietly that only she could hear, "I know Mummy works really hard. She's always tired, and sometimes I see her crying when she thinks I'm asleep. I don't need toys or fancy clothes, but could you please send us a Daddy, not for me, but for Mummy. She needs someone to help her and make her smile again." 3 rows ahead, a man in an expensive suit shifted uncomfortably. Marcus Thompson had attended St. Mary's for only a few weeks, seeking something he couldn't quite name. At 42, he had built a successful technology company from nothing. His penthouse apartment overlooked the city, his garage held 3 luxury cars, and his bank account had more zeros than most people could imagine. Yet something was missing. Marcus had grown up in this very neighborhood, in a cramped apartment with his single mother. He remembered the struggle, the worry, the way his mother's shoulders would sag when she thought he wasn't looking. Success had lifted him far from those days, but lately, the memories had been returning with unexpected force. As the congregation began to file out, Marcus noticed the young mother and daughter ahead of him. The little girl's shoes were worn but clean, and her dress, though simple, was pressed and neat. The mother carried herself with quiet dignity despite the obvious signs of exhaustion. Something about them reminded him of his own childhood. Of Sunday evenings when his mother would bring him to this same church, hoping for strength to face another difficult week. Emma tugged on her mother's hand as they reached the church steps. "Mummy, can we light a candle?" Sarah checked her watch. She had exactly 30 minutes before her evening shift at the diner. "Just a quick one, sweetheart." They returned to the dimly lit sanctuary where rows of votive candles flickered in red glass holders. Emma carefully dropped a quarter into the donation box and lit a small candle with her mother's help. "What are you praying for, baby?" Sarah asked softly. Emma looked up with serious eyes. "Just for good things, Mummy. For you to be happy." Marcus, who had lingered near the back of the church, watched this tender moment unfold. Something stirred in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. When they left, he found himself following at a distance, not with any ill intent, but driven by a curiosity he couldn't explain. He watched Sarah drop Emma off at the apartment building's small playground, where an elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, waited with a warm smile. Sarah hugged her daughter, whispered something that made Emma giggle, then hurried down the street toward the diner. Marcus stood there for a long moment, remembering. His mother had worked at a diner too, coming home with tired feet and the smell of coffee in her hair. She had sacrificed everything for him, and he had promised himself that someday he would find a way to help other mothers who were walking that same difficult path. The next Sunday, Marcus arrived at church early. He watched Sarah and Emma settle into their usual pew, noticed how Emma's prayer position was becoming a ritual, hands pressed together with such earnest concentration after the service. As they lit their weekly candle, Marcus approached quietly. "Excuse me," he said gently. Sarah turned, slightly startled. Up close, Marcus could see the wariness in her eyes, but also the strength. "I'm Marcus Thompson. I've been attending services here, and I couldn't help but notice your daughter's devotion. It's quite touching." Sarah's protective instincts kicked in slightly, but something in Marcus's voice was genuinely kind. "She takes her prayers very seriously," Sarah said carefully. Emma looked up at the tall man with curious eyes. There was something warm about his smile that reminded her of the grandfather she'd never had. "I actually grew up in this neighborhood," Marcus continued. "My mother and I used to sit in these same pews. I remember what it was like, and I've been thinking, well, I've been looking for ways to give back to the community that shaped me." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I run a small foundation, and we're always looking for hard-working people who might benefit from some support. Educational scholarships, job training, that sort of thing. Would you be interested in hearing more about it?" Sarah's first instinct was to decline politely. She'd learned to be wary of offers that seemed too good to be true. But something in Marcus's eyes was familiar, a recognition of shared experience. "I don't accept charity," she said quietly but firmly. "I wouldn't offer it," Marcus replied with respect. "I'm talking about opportunities. Real work, fair pay, a chance to use your skills in new ways." Over the following weeks, their Sunday conversations continued. Marcus learned that Sarah had a business degree she'd never been able to use, abandoned when Emma's father left and survival became the priority. Sarah learned that Marcus genuinely understood the weight of single parenthood, having been raised by a mother who'd carried that burden alone. Emma, meanwhile, watched these conversations with growing hope. Her prayers had evolved from desperate requests to grateful thanks as she saw her mother's smile return, genuine and bright. When Marcus offered Sarah a position managing community outreach for his foundation, with a salary that would allow her to work normal hours and weekends off, she cried for the first time in months. But these were different tears, tears of relief and possibility. Emma's prayer that evening was the simplest yet. "Thank you, God. I think Mummy's going to be okay now." Marcus, walking home through the familiar streets of his childhood, felt something he'd been searching for without knowing it. Success meant more than money in the bank. Sometimes it meant being in the right place at the right time, with the right heart to listen to a little girl's prayer and the wisdom to answer it in a way that honored both faith and dignity. The following Sunday, all three of them sat together in the third row from the back. A family not of blood but of understanding, gratitude, and hope. Emma's prayers now included thanks for answered wishes and new beginnings, while Sarah and Marcus quietly planned ways to help other families walking the path they both remembered so well. In the golden light of the stained glass windows, 3 candles flickered together, representing 3 lives that had found exactly what they needed in the most unexpected way.